I'm back! Again, he says. Shadows. Shadows suck. I'm tripodless today. I came into town, run a few errands. Delicious. Definitely in need of a haircut. I'm getting wings. Hello, hello. Big Christmas tree behind me. You know why? We're one of those countries that celebrates Christmas. That's right. Now, we're not necessarily a Christian country per se, but we don't mind Christmas. Mostly because it comes with public holidays and presents and a justification for drinking and eating to excess. That kind of justification is a kind of justification that suits human beings down to the ground. So, here we are. Dear God, somebody's slipped cannabis into this licorice flavoured roly paper. I must thank him when I find him. How are you, Rick? How's life at MMJ 432? I think that's right. Could be wrong, but if I am, blame it on the cannabis. Everything else gets blamed on cannabis. The floods, world hunger, war, it's all because of cannabis. I mean, it's not really, but they tend to think that they'll just blame it all on cannabis. We'll all go, oh, isn't cannabis terrible? When in reality, it's bloody lovely. Kev, how are you, sir? I'm hoping that my volume is coming through adequately. If somebody can let me know, I would appreciate that. I'm well. Obviously you heard me, so my volume must be okay. I'm sitting here, enjoying the sunshine, with a big Christmas tree behind me, appreciating being alive, smoking cannabis, illegally, because we have such a backward country. Well, a backward government that while the rest of the world is ending the persecution of the people, ours is happy to continue it. Let's send another 90-odd thousand young Australians through the court process this year. Let's let another 250,000 epilepsy sufferers continue to suffer. Yes. Excellent, thank you, Kev. So, here I am, out in the wild blue yonder, smoking my cannabis as though I haven't got a care in the world. Well, of course I do. Everyone does. That's what being alive in the world is all about, isn't it? Caring. And sharing. I hope you're sharing. You know, that little share button thing on your left at the bottom. Just click share. Share now. It's a public page, so you can share it wide. Share it any way you like. I was going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing here in Ballarat. Argo nights, all this political stuff. It's like, what's Ancient up to? I don't know, just going with the flow, you know me. But there's a method to the madness. We must maintain a strong visibility. We must always keep cannabis conversation on the tip of the tongue. It's what our job, you know, to raise the public consciousness of the harms and of the suffering of the vulnerable. Some people, they get confused as to what I'm about or as to who I am. Some people say this, some people say that. It's hard to tell, really. At the end of the day, what I always say is you can listen to what I'm saying now, and then you can go all the way back for years through the MCUA pages, through the Community for Cannabis Evolution, well before the Ancient J page came about, and I was saying the exact same thing as what I'm saying right now. My direction and my focus has not changed. We need the general public to support radical reforms, not something that's going to take years and years and years, but we need the public to stand up and fight to end suffering today. All of these mechanisms with law changes and law reform commissions and meetings and so forth, while all of that's going on, real people, real young, vulnerable Australians are suffering. And we're not talking about the stoners getting arrested, because that's happening every day. When you've got, 80, 90,000 arrests happening every year, they're happening every day of the week. Somewhere, some young Australian's life is being ruined because the police have come into his life or her life. Not because they chose to use cannabis, because there's nothing wrong with using cannabis, but because they got caught breaking an arbitrary rule. We need to focus on the reality. Suffering's happening right now. Yes, I get passionate about what I do, but when you look at the grand scale of this, it's not about one or two people. It is about hundreds of thousands, millions of Australians who use cannabis, who are being persecuted, discriminated against, whose lives are being scarred and limited because of these arbitrary laws. When you've got, let's just look at some of the realities that they try to hide from you, okay? When you've got over 2 million Australians who are smoking regularly, and you and I both know what regularly means. That means pretty much every day. So let's just say that they're only smoking a gram. We know they're probably smoking more on average, but say it's a gram, okay? So even if there was, say 2 million, but we know there's more, and the government have acknowledged that there's more, and the statistics show that there's more, but just let's use a round number. 2 million people using a gram a day, that's 2 million grams every day. 14 million grams every week. How many kilos of cannabis do you think there are in 14 million grams? Week in, week out, week in, week out. That's a lot of production, a lot of consumption. It's one of our biggest industries. It's not a little backyard thing. There are people involved in this industry that have investments, grand scale, massive big shipping operations, massive big growing operations. All of that exists because there are millions of Australians buying cannabis every single day. So prohibition does not stop the business. It supports it. That business kills people. That business is 100% illegal. That business is employing people across this country in unsafe working conditions. Hey Deborah, how are you? I've been fighting this fight for a long time, and I'll continue to fight it until it's over. And then I'll go on to another fight. For me, I don't really envisage myself having some sort of cannabis business down the track. It's never really been part of my plan. I'm not in the advocacy side of things to try and promote a brand or to try and create some sort of industry or anything. I'm fighting the fight because that's what's needed. That's what's needed from all of you to get involved in the fight, to stand up for your rights and for the rights of those that can't stand up for themselves. I've got a friend in jail at the moment. He's been in there for over a decade now. Killed a kid over $3,000. Drug debt, cannabis. So, you know, human life, $3,000. Doesn't seem like fair value, does it? Brutal death as well. Horrible. Brutally beaten, left in a forest, died alone of exposure in the middle of the night. His family suffering. My friend's family suffering because he's gone, he's in jail. The other people involved going to jail and their families suffering. Prohibition is what caused that suffering. Prohibition is what caused that situation to occur. Good people put into difficult situations making bad choices. And we're allowing that because we're not making the government end prohibition. We're not doing the logical and rational thing and taking the thing out of our society that is causing so much damage and harm. Hey, George. It wasn't that many years ago that the idea of sitting in the middle, like, I'm on Sturt Street, right? I got traffic going down both sides of me. I'm in the middle. Big Christmas tree and statues everywhere. I've told you about the statues. I'm loving it. But this wouldn't have even been, you know, like, I'd be crazy. You know, not just sort of smoking, but actually streaming, going, hey, here I am, I'm smoking cannabis. People running around, walking around, doing their thing. I'm not causing them any dramas. You know, Mitch. So nobody's paying any notice. No attention whatsoever. Because there's nothing. It's not like I'm some sort of degenerate. Yes, I'm breaking a law, but it's a law that shouldn't exist. A law that should never have existed. A law that has caused nothing but suffering and harm since its inception. It is time to end that law. It is time to tell our government that they are not the ones who tell us what to do. I think where humanity's coming of age, I think we're coming to the point of realization that the world that we're living in is not the world that we thought it was. Everything's becoming a corporate-owned entity. Not a society anymore, it's not a community. It's a corporate takeover with departments where you have to register to be part of the system. And what a messed up system it is. Sorry, just looking for my glasses. Let's switch them over so I can actually read the messages coming through properly. It is a beautiful afternoon. Thank you, Deborah. Oh God, this joint's awesome. Yeah. I think we, as a community, we know that the stuff going on around us isn't any good. And what's worse is that we've got some members of our community that are seeing what's wrong, but they're getting into that mentality where they're trying to blame a quadrant or a section of society. I mean, if anyone's to lay your blame at the door of, it's the Liberal and the Labor Party, neither one of which have brought anything to this country that's improved it. They've robbed us of our assets. They've sold them off to their mates to make money. They're screwing the people on a daily basis. Liberal and Labor have run their course. People know that. It's time to move on. It's time to actually take control of our country and get a bit of self-direction in there, get a bit of community spirit into something, because we've walked away from that. Everything these days is, if you want to participate, you must pay. We wonder why our kids are being destructive in the streets. You know, whether it's the immigrants' kids or the Australian-born kids, they're bored. And worse than that, they look at the world and they see there's nothing to be excited about. There's nothing to reach forward to. It's just pain, it's poverty. Our forefathers, our ancestors, they'd all be pretty distressed, I think. They'd be a bit upset with what we've done, with what they left for us. You know, they left us a firm foundation to build a great new world, a future where our children... Hi, Bobby. Hey, Stephen. Yeah. But it's not too late. As I said, I think humanity, society is coming of age. We're realising that we've been screwed over. We're realising that if we want to get things back on track, we've actually got to get engaged. We've got to participate. We're using Facebook, I think, finally, constructively, you know, in many ways, where we're networking together. We're becoming a stronger community. We're able to share our ideas. We're able to get the information out there that we need. It really is an effective tool if used correctly. It's growing. Like, cannabis law reform is one step in the right direction, but there's other steps that we need to take. We've got to evaluate why it is we live in a world where people can have nothing, just so those of us with very little can feel better about ourselves. You know, at least we haven't got nothing. You know, it's like there's no need. There's no need for children to be hungry. There's no need for people to sleep on our streets. We've allowed the system to manipulate itself in order for us to have to adapt to it, rather than assisting a system that adapts to the needs of society. You know, we're in this thing where it's longest practiced rather than best practiced. And we need to change that. We need to take responsibility. We need to take action in order to make it better. We can't leave it in the hands of others. We can't trust that it'll get better on its own. We can't just sit there and comfortably go, oh, it's okay, the government will sort it out. The government are the problem. Or rather, those that make up the government. And we're not just talking about the politicians, we're talking about the entire civil service. It is a putrid, stagnant pond. Money just falls into it, never to be seen again. This cashless welfare card is the prime example. Like, who amongst you would accept an $800 fee a month for your FPOS transactions? None of you. And yet, that's what we've allowed to happen with these cashless welfare cards. We're picking up a tab of $800 a month, FPOS fees. That's not very good. That's almost what the entire benefit is for that poor individual that's actually on a benefit. Hey, Stephen. Yeah. Look, it is... I think people want to rally together, people want to stand up, but there's a fear because the system is the system. And they use that, you know, they've got armed enforcers on the streets. But there's so many more of us. This is what you have to remember. And at the end of the day, the police, your armed services, all of these entities were created for the people, you know, not for a government to use against the people. So, you know, achieving critical mass, when you have the populace of the country wanting change to happen and only the government standing in its way, then the responsibility is upon, like, the police services and so forth, to enforce the people's will and to remove those people from those positions of power if necessary, to arrest them, to imprison them. Which is exactly what would happen if we actually started investigating some of these rorts that they're running, like the cashless welfare cards. $60 million slipped surreptitiously off to a couple of mates' bank accounts from the welfare fund. No wonder our welfare funding is so high. But it's not going to the people getting services. It's going to these job agencies and these training agencies and these cashless welfare card businesses. That's where the money's going. It's not going to the people that genuinely need it. It's not going to our vulnerable. It's being chewed up by bureaucracy. That's got to come to an end. We've got to get a more streamlined approach at delivering public funds where they're needed. Oh, mate, 444 million in the refund. Mate, what I'd like to know is, where's the future fund gone? You know what I mean? You know when they sold all of Telstra and they put the money into the future fund? Where the fuck's our money? How much of that have they spent? They've been shonking us, ripping us off for years, and it is time to not only take our country back, but to declare these organisations criminal organisations so that we can seize all our assets back, so that we can run investigations into all of these little contracts that they've given and find out where the corruption is. Criminals running this country. I think it's time that the people made their voices heard, their feelings clear. I think it's time that you all realised that if you're not part of the solution, you're literally part of the problem. Don't think that I mean that everyone's got to do what I do. Far from it. But everyone doing their own little bit. This is my little bit. I do what I can. Other people do what they can. There's no more or less. It's what you can. You know? Nobody's more important than any of the others, because we're all just doing what we can, trying to be effective at doing what we do to change the way things are. It's not about being famous, it's not about being important, it's not about being anything other than engaged with change. You know, a human doing, not just a human being. Difference between pointing at a problem and working towards a solution. All of you people have got that potential. The fact that you listen to me shows that you've got the thoughts in your mind. I like to think of myself like your Pauline Hanson, your Darren Hinch, your Clive Palmers. You know, I'm talking about what you're thinking, except unlike those people, I'm not trying to mould it around hatred, not trying to stigmatise a section of our community, other than the politicians, the parasitical entities that have sucked the blood from our carcass for decades, generations. Look for the similarities with the people around you rather than the differences. See that parents, no matter the colour of their skin, want a better world for their children. See that children, no matter the colour of their skin, want their parents to be safe as they get old. Look at parents, not the colour of their skin, who want a reliable education system for their children. These are the things that we all share. That's the stuff we should be focused on. That's the stuff we should be trying to create. A society where those things are not dreams, but a reality. I'm not interested in making millionaires. I don't think anyone, I think people should be rewarded for their hard work, and I don't get into that whole let's be communists or socialists and everyone should have the same. I think people that won't do anything, don't deserve to have the extras in life. But I don't think it means that they deserve to be sleeping on a street hungry, begging. I think hard work should be rewarded. But I don't think we should make people suffer any more than they're already suffering when they're at the bottom end of the ladder. We're better than that. We can do better than that. All of us together. Victorian elections are coming up this month. Federal elections next year. Start to look at the independents. Start to look at people around you and, you know, wonder, would they make a good independent? Start to think about government as something that is ours, not something that is out to get us. Let's recapture the mechanisms that make this country run, and let's put them back on a track that is going to see the future a better place for Australians, all Australians. Hey Adrian, how are you? Oh, look, the fighter jet pilot fucking plane things, that's a joke. There's a lot of our little treaty action that we've done as far as defence, it's just wastage of money, committing ourselves to friggin', you know, like we're in Ireland, like submarines, mate. You know what I mean? Submarines floating around Australia. That'll keep every fucker out if that's what we really want. You know? Surrounded by water. Girt by sea, remember? Girt by sea! Yeah, oh, it's probably even a little bit longer than that, Stephen. Honestly, we've allowed a corporate takeover to happen surreptitiously in Australia. Like the 20-odd year mark isn't too far off. It's about 30, I think it was about 88 that the Australia Act was slipped into act. Even though the Australian public voted against it, they still actually brought it in, gave powers to local councils, turned them into corporations and so forth, allowed them to start extorting the populace so that, you know, there's like another parasite being brought into the system. And thence began the public sell-off of our assets. You know, everything that had been built by our ancestors, destroyed, sold off, stripped. You left with nothing. Countries coming in, taking away all of our natural resources, leaving us nothing. We can do better. We will do better. Check out your independence. Consider standing yourself. Have you got what it takes? Are you willing to commit to your country? Because we're not just talking about sending representatives off to Parliament. We're talking about sending a whole team of representatives